Somewhere right now, someone just got their first real paycheck bump, the kind that finally leaves a little room to breathe. And in that exact moment, they're about to make a decision, one that will quietly shape the next 10 years of their financial life. You'll see in this video what wealthy people actually upgrade first, once money stops being tight, and it's almost never what you'd expect. Think about what most people imagine happens. The moment someone finally has extra money, a nicer car in the driveway, a bigger television, a better watch on the wrist. That image is everywhere. It's in movies, in music videos, in the stories people tell about what making it looks like. But here's something worth sitting with for a moment. If you actually look closely at people who build lasting wealth, rather than people who simply look wealthy for a season, their first moves rarely match that image at all. The car doesn't change first. The watch doesn't change first. Something else does, something far less visible, something that almost never shows up in a photo. Here's the real question worth asking. If the obvious visible upgrades aren't what separates people who stay wealthy from people who briefly look wealthy and then lose it all, what actually is the difference? Think about how many stories you've heard, maybe even people you know personally, who came into real money, a big raise, a bonus, a windfall of some kind, and within a few years, somehow ended up right back where they started, or worse. And then think about the quieter examples, people who never seem to flash anything, who drive the same reliable car for a decade, who live in a perfectly ordinary house, and yet somehow their financial position keeps getting stronger, year after year, almost invisibly. The difference between those two outcomes isn't luck. It isn't even really about how much money arrived in the first place. It's about what got upgraded first, in that early window when the decision could have gone either direction. Stay with me until the end. Because once you understand what actually gets prioritized first by people who keep their wealth, instead of losing it, you'll start noticing this pattern everywhere, including possibly in your own recent decisions. To understand why so many people upgrade the wrong things first, we need to look at where that instinct actually comes from. Because nobody wakes up one day and consciously decides, I'm going to prioritize looking successful over becoming successful. That instinct gets planted long before anyone has real money to make these decisions with. Think about how wealth gets portrayed almost everywhere, long before anyone actually experiences it. Movies show the car, the watch, the house. Music videos show bottles, jewelry, the visible trophies of arrival. Social media shows vacations, the new kitchen, the upgraded wardrobe. What almost never gets shown is the boring part, the accountant meeting, the mentor conversation, the extra hours spent reading instead of scrolling, the difficult decision about which relationships actually deserve investment and which don't. So, an entire generation grows up with a very specific mental image of what making it looks like, and that image is almost entirely made of things you can photograph. Here's the problem with that image. None of those visible things actually produce more wealth. They consume it. A nicer car doesn't generate income. A luxury watch doesn't compound. These purchases are, at best, neutral, and at worst, they quietly drain the exact resource that could have been used to build something that actually lasts. But because the visible version of wealth is the only version most people ever see modeled, it becomes the default response the moment extra money shows up. There's a deeper layer to this too, worth naming directly. Visible upgrades serve a social function that invisible upgrades don't. A new car gets noticed, a better mentor, a healthier daily routine, a more supportive partner. These things rarely get commented on by anyone outside your closest circle. So even when someone intellectually knows that the invisible upgrades matter more, the visible ones still pull harder because they deliver something immediate, a reaction, a bit of recognition, proof to the outside world that something has changed. That pull is powerful, and it's completely human. But it's also exactly the pattern that separates people who briefly look wealthy from people who quietly stay wealthy. This is where the pattern actually begins, not with a single bad decision, but with an entire cultural script about what upgrading even means. absorbed long before anyone has the money to test it against reality. So if this script gets absorbed so early, why does it still catch so many people off guard when money finally does arrive? Because the moment extra money shows up, it rarely comes with instructions. It just comes with possibility. And possibility, without any framework to guide it, tends to default back to whatever script was already sitting there, waiting. Consider what actually happens in that first moment of financial breathing room: a raise, a bonus, a side hustle finally taking off. There's often a genuine emotional need behind the first purchases that follow, relief mostly, a need to prove to yourself, and sometimes to people who doubted you, that the struggle was worth it, that something has actually changed. That emotional need is real, and it deserves some compassion. Years of financial tightness leave a mark, and the impulse to finally breathe a little is completely understandable. But here's what tends to happen next, almost without anyone noticing the shift. That first celebratory purchase feels so good that it becomes the template for every purchase that follows. The nicer dinner becomes a nicer dinner every week. The one new outfit becomes an updated wardrobe. The single indulgence becomes a new baseline, a new normal that requires the income to keep matching it indefinitely. Meanwhile, the invisible upgrades, the ones that would have actually protected and grown that new financial position, keep getting postponed. I'll find a better mentor once I understand my industry better. I'll fix my daily habits once things settle down. I'll have the harder conversation with my partner about money once we're less stressed. Each of those postponements feels reasonable in the moment, but postponed indefinitely, they simply never happen at all. There's a specific reason invisible upgrades get postponed so consistently, worth naming clearly: they're harder. Finding the right mentor takes effort and a bit of vulnerability. Fixing daily habits requires discipline that doesn't show results immediately. Difficult conversations about money in a relationship require honesty that can feel risky. Visible upgrades, by comparison, require almost nothing. A few clicks, a credit card, and the reward arrives immediately. So the harder, slower, more valuable upgrades keep losing to the easier, faster, less valuable ones. Not because anyone consciously chooses the wrong path, but because one path is simply much easier to walk down, especially in a moment when someone finally feels like they've earned the right to make things a little easier on themselves. There's a psychological pattern worth naming here too, one that shows up in a lot of research on reward and behavior. The human brain simply responds more strongly to rewards that arrive quickly than to rewards that arrive slowly, even when the slower reward is objectively larger. A new pair of shoes delivers its reward within days. A better financial system delivers its reward over years, in a form that's hard to feel in the moment, even though the eventual difference is enormous. This isn't a character flaw. It's simply how attention and reward work for most people, most of the time. But understanding that tendency is exactly what allows someone to work against it deliberately, instead of being quietly steered by it without ever realizing a choice was even being made. If you ask most people why their financial position didn't improve as much as their income did over the years, they'll usually point to circumstances: an unexpected expense, a slow market, bad timing. Here's the mistake underneath that explanation: treating the visible upgrades as neutral, harmless rewards, completely separate from the actual trajectory of their finances. They're not separate. Every dollar directed toward a visible upgrade is a dollar that didn't go toward an invisible one. That's not a moral judgment, it's simply arithmetic, and arithmetic, applied consistently over years, tends to produce very different outcomes depending on which direction it consistently leaned. Consider two people receiving the exact same raise, the exact same year. One immediately upgrades their car, their wardrobe, their weekend routine. The other upgrades their financial education, their tools for their side hustle, the quality of the people they surround themselves with professionally. Both people feel, in that first year, roughly the same amount of satisfaction. The visible upgrades genuinely do feel good in the moment. But 5 years later, the trajectories rarely look the same. One person's expenses simply grew to match their income, leaving them in roughly the same financial position as before, just with nicer things surrounding that position. The other person's capacity to earn, invest, and make good decisions has been quietly compounding the entire time, often invisible to anyone watching from the outside. There's a second mistake layered on top of the first, worth naming directly, assuming that invisible upgrades are somehow optional, a nice-to-have for people with extra time or extra discipline, rather than treating them as the actual mechanism that determines whether new money turns into lasting wealth or simply evaporates. Nobody would skip fixing a leak in their roof simply because it wasn't visible from the street. But financially, that's essentially what happens when the boring, invisible improvements get postponed indefinitely in favor of whatever upgrade happens to be visible and immediate. The tragic part of this mistake is how quietly it operates. Nobody making these choices feels reckless. Every individual purchase feels reasonable, earned, deserved even. It's only the accumulated pattern, examined years later, that reveals which direction all those small, reasonable decisions were actually pointing the entire time. There's a term sometimes used for this pattern: lifestyle inflation or lifestyle creep. The tendency for spending to rise in near perfect proportion to income, so that the gap between the two never actually widens, no matter how many raises accumulate over a career. What makes lifestyle creep so difficult to notice is that it never feels like a single decision. It feels like dozens of small disconnected upgrades, each one triggered by its own reasonable occasion, a promotion, a good year, a milestone worth celebrating. Nobody sits down and decides, "I will spend every future raise as soon as it arrives." And yet, examined honestly over a decade, that's precisely the pattern many people's spending actually follows, one small celebration at a time. So here it is, the part that actually separates people who keep their wealth from people who briefly display it. The first real upgrade almost never touches anything visible at all. It touches the environment around the person, the invisible infrastructure that determines what happens to every dollar that follows. Specifically, it usually starts with three things, in some order depending on the person. The first is the people closest to them, not in a cold, transactional way, but in a very real sense. A partner who shares the same values around money, who treats financial honesty as normal rather than confrontational, becomes an enormous long-term advantage, and a mentor, someone even slightly further along the same path, willing to answer the questions nobody else in your life can, shortens the learning curve in ways that would otherwise take years of expensive trial and error to figure out alone. The second is the actual mechanics of managing what's coming in, not glamorous, rarely mentioned in casual conversation, but decisive. Understanding exactly where money goes, having a real system instead of a vague sense of things being probably fine, and treating that system with the same seriousness a business would treat its own books. The third is the capacity to keep earning and improving, rather than the capacity to spend what's already been earned. Better tools for whatever actually generates income, better information, the specific books, skills, or relationships that compound over time rather than depreciate the moment they're purchased. None of these three things photograph well. You can't post a picture of a good financial system or a mentor conversation or a healthier daily routine and get the same immediate reaction as a picture of a new car. That's precisely why so few people prioritize them first, and it's precisely why the people who do quietly separate themselves from everyone chasing the visible version of the same success. Here's what makes this especially worth understanding. These invisible upgrades aren't more expensive than the visible ones. Often they're considerably cheaper. A book costs less than a nice dinner. An honest conversation costs nothing but a bit of discomfort. What they require isn't more money, it's simply a different set of priorities, applied in that first critical window when new money arrives and the direction hasn't been decided yet. Let me tell you about two people. We'll call them Ethan and Marcus. Both worked similar jobs, and around the same year, both received a meaningful raise, close in size, close in timing. Ethan celebrated the way most people would understand completely. A nicer car within the first few months, a wardrobe refresh, weekend routines that quietly became a bit more expensive a bit more often. None of these decisions felt reckless in the moment. Each one felt earned, deserved, a fair reward for years of harder financial times. Marcus received a similar raise and felt the exact same pull towards celebration, but he made one different decision early on, almost by accident. A coworker mentioned an accountant who specialized in helping people just past his income level, someone typically a few steps ahead of where Marcus currently stood. Marcus reached out, mostly out of curiosity, expecting a sales pitch. Instead, he got a blunt assessment of exactly where his money was actually going, patterns he'd never bothered to examine closely before. He also, somewhat unexpectedly, walked away with 2 book recommendations and an introduction to someone further along a similar path, willing to answer questions occasionally over coffee. None of this cost very much. A single consultation, 2 paperback books, a few casual conversations spread out over months. But something shifted after that. Marcus started treating his finances the way that accountant treated her own clients, with actual structure instead of a vague sense of things being fine. He read the books, he kept the occasional coffee conversations going, and slowly that relationship became something closer to genuine mentorship. 5 years later, Ethan's income had grown modestly, in line with typical raises over that period, but so had his expenses, almost dollar for dollar. He owned nicer things than he had 5 years earlier, but his actual financial position, examined honestly, had barely moved. Marcus's income had grown too, roughly the same pace as Ethan's. But his financial position looked completely different. The structure he'd built early on meant that raises actually accumulated into something, instead of simply funding a nicer version of the same lifestyle. The mentor relationship had opened doors professionally that Ethan's network simply didn't include. Neither of them was smarter than the other. Neither of them earned dramatically more. The entire difference traced back to one early choice in that first window when new money arrived and a direction had to be chosen, consciously or not. There's a third person worth mentioning here, someone named Sophia, who took a slightly different path than either of them. Sophia's raise was actually smaller than either Ethan's or Marcus's, but she made a specific decision early on that neither of them made. Instead of choosing between celebrating and investing in herself, she deliberately split the difference on purpose every single time. Half of any extra money went towards something invisible, a course, a book, a conversation with someone further ahead. The other half went towards something she genuinely enjoyed, without guilt, without overthinking it. This wasn't a rigid, joyless system. It was simple enough that she barely had to think about it after the first few times. And because neither side ever felt neglected, she never experienced the kind of sudden, overwhelming urge to spend everything at once that sometimes follows periods of excessive restriction. 10 years later, Sophia's financial position sat somewhere between Ethan's and Marcus's, closer to Marcus's than either of them would have predicted, given her smaller starting raise. Her habit of consistently, deliberately splitting new money in the same direction year after year had quietly outpaced Ethan's larger income entirely. So if you recognized a little of Ethan in your own recent decisions, here's the good news. This pattern is entirely reversible, starting with the very next dollar that comes in. The first step is recognizing the window itself. Anytime your income increases, meaningfully or even slightly, there's a brief period where the direction of that new money hasn't been decided yet. That window is valuable, and it closes quickly once new spending habits settle into place. The second step is prioritizing the people around you, deliberately. Ask yourself honestly whether the people closest to you share healthy values around money, and whether you have even one person, even slightly further along than you, willing to answer honest questions. If you don't, seeking that relationship out is worth far more than almost any purchase you could make instead. The third step is building actual structure around your money, before increasing what flows through it. A real system for tracking where money goes, reviewed regularly, does more for long-term wealth than almost any single financial decision available to most people. The fourth step is investing in whatever actually generates your income, before upgrading whatever simply displays it. Better tools, better information, better skills relevant to your specific work tend to compound in ways that visible purchases simply cannot. The fifth step is allowing yourself some celebration without letting it become the default response every single time. There's nothing wrong with occasionally enjoying the fruits of hard work. The danger isn't celebration itself, it's celebration becoming the automatic, unexamined first move every time, without ever being weighed against the alternative. One simple way to apply this, borrowed from Sophia's approach, is deciding in advance how any new money will be split before it even arrives. Even a straightforward half-and-half rule removes the need to relitigate the decision every single time and prevents the all-or-nothing swings that often follow periods of excessive restriction. The sixth step is revisiting this decision periodically, not just once. Each new raise, each new bit of financial breathing room, presents the same choice again. The people who stay ahead aren't the ones who got it right once. They're the ones who keep choosing the invisible upgrade first, consistently across many small decisions over many years. None of these steps require dramatic sacrifice. They simply require noticing the moment the choice actually happens and choosing deliberately instead of defaulting to whatever script got absorbed long before there was any real money to test it against. If this video helped you see your own priorities a little more clearly, that's exactly why this channel exists. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the conversations still to come. Somewhere right now, someone just received good financial news, a raise, a bonus, a side hustle finally starting to pay off. In the next few days, without necessarily realizing it, they'll make a decision that quietly sets the direction for everything that follows. Not through one dramatic choice, but through a series of small, reasonable feeling ones, each easy to justify on its own. This isn't a story about avoiding every reward or treating enjoyment as something to feel guilty about. Celebrating real progress is human, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a story about sequence, about what gets prioritized first, in that narrow window before new spending habits harden into a new normal. Think about Ethan and Marcus one more time. Same income, same raise, same opportunity. The only real difference was which upgrade came first, and everything that quietly followed from that single early choice. And think about Sophia too. She never had to choose entirely between enjoying her money and building with it. She simply decided on purpose that both mattered and gave each one its place consistently instead of leaving it to chance. That choice is in front of you too, the next time any financial breathing room arrives, however small it might be. Not someday, when the amount feels more significant, the very next time it happens. So the real question isn't whether you deserve to enjoy your money. Of course you do. It's simply what you choose to strengthen first, the version of your life people can see, or the version that quietly determines everything else. Here at The Bigger Picture, we'll always explore the financial questions that truly matter, not with fear, not with sensational headlines, but with honest conversations, clear explanations, and the bigger picture behind every story.